Today I will be going over how to use the distributive property to solve equations. First, let's talk about the distributive property. If you ever have any kind of grouping symbols, either parentheses or even brackets like these, when we're solving equations, a lot of the times we want to get rid of those grouping symbols. So for example, you could have something that looks like this, or something that looks like this. And we want to use that distributive property to get rid of either the parentheses or brackets or any kind of grouping symbols that we see. So when we have a number like this 4 outside of our parentheses or brackets, we want to distribute that to both of the terms inside of the parentheses. And what I mean by that is you're going to take the 4 and you're going to multiply it by the first term. So in this case, the y. And we're going to do 4 times y, which is 4y. Then you're going to take that 4 again and multiply it by the second term. In this case, it's the minus 3 or negative 3. We don't want to forget about the minus sign in front. So that's going to be a minus 12. And that's how you would get rid of those parentheses in this case. In the second example I have here, you would do the same thing. You would take the number outside, the 2, and multiply it by the first term on the inside. 2 times 1 is just 2. And you would do the same thing with the second term. So multiply 2 times negative x, which gets us negative 2x. And that's how you would use the distributive property to get rid of grouping symbols. So let's see an example of that. All right, so in this first example, we do have some parentheses going on here. And you'll notice there is a y term inside of the parentheses, which is why we have to use that distributive property. Because if not, we can never get y fully by itself. So to do that, let's go ahead and distribute this negative 2. So we're going to do negative 2 times y, which is negative 2y. And then negative 2 times negative 4, which gets us a positive 8. Then everything else will be the same. So we have the plus 3y equals 13. Now what we want to do, since we have two terms with a y in them, we want to go ahead and simplify that by combining the like terms. Anytime you distribute, a lot of the times you will have to combine like terms. So to do that, our like terms are negative 2y and a positive 3y. When we combine like terms, we add the coefficients together. So we have negative 2 plus 3. That's going to result in a positive 1y or just y. You can write it however you want. You can write it with a coefficient of 1 if you wish. We do have to remember to not leave anything out. So we don't want to forget about this positive 8 and then equals 13. You could have also written this as y plus 8 equals 13. Wherever you put that variable, just remember we want it to have the right sign. In this case, it ended up being a positive y, so this y is still positive no matter where it was positioned. And the 8 was also positive, so that's positive wherever it's positioned there as well. Now we can go ahead and simplify the rest of this. And to do that, we just need to subtract 8 from both sides. And when we do that, we will get y equals 5. Since the variable is by itself, we have solved the equation, and we can go ahead and also check that as well. Just like we always do, we want to rewrite the original equation. We don't ever want to rewrite the equation after we've done something to it, just because we could have made a mistake getting there. So because we said y was equal to 5, anywhere you see a y, we're going to plug in a 5 instead. Now we can go ahead and start to simplify. There are a few ways that you can go ahead and simplify these. Whichever way you do it should work. You can either distribute the negative 2 inside the parentheses, or you could just simplify what's inside the parentheses already. You could start with multiplying the 3 and the 5 together. Really, however you see it, as long as you're using the right order of operations. I'm going to go ahead and simplify what's inside the parentheses. So we're going to do 5 minus 4, which is just 1. Carry everything else down. If it helps, just do one step at a time. Try not to do too many steps in the same line. So now we can just go ahead and I'm going to just multiply both of these. So I'm going to do negative 2 times 1, which is just negative 2, and then a positive 3 times 5, which is 15. And then if we take negative 2 and add 15 to it, we do get 13. And yes, 13 is equal to 13. So that does mean that the solution we found, y equals 5, is the correct solution to the equation. For this next example, you may see it looks a little bit different. We now have two sets of grouping symbols in one equation, not just one set of grouping symbols, just like that last example. Sometimes you will see two sets of grouping symbols one on each side of the equation. It really just depends on what you're learning at the time. But in this case, this just means that we're going to have to distribute twice. So we're going to do the same thing we did in the last example, except we're just going to do it 2 times instead of just once. So we can start with the first one and just distribute the 5. So 5 times r, and then 5 times 9. If you want to, you can carry everything down, or you can just do the second set all in the same line. That's what I'm going to do, but you don't have to do that. It's just kind of up to you. We also want to remember that this is a negative 2, so we're distributing the negative as well. We don't want to leave that out, and we don't want to forget about it over here as well. So we're going to have negative 2 times 1, which gets us negative 2, and then negative 2 times negative r, which will get us a positive 2r. So again, we don't want to forget about the signs that go along with our numbers. Otherwise, we'll start to lose the signs and we'll have different signs than really what we should. Now, after you distribute, the next step is really to kind of see if you can combine any like terms. In this case, we can start with the 5r and the 2r, or you could also start with 45 minus 2. Whichever one you want to do first is fine. You could do them both at the same time. It's really just kind of what you're comfortable with. So I'm going to start with the 5r plus 2r. That's going to get 7r. If you want to, you can carry everything else down. And that's still going to be a plus here. But you could have done the 45 minus 2 as well, all in the same line, which that's going to get us 43. So again, whichever method works for you. If you want to do it all in one line or just do one step at a time, anything works. Now we can go ahead and start to get the variable by itself. Because we only have one term with a variable in it, that's when we can start using inverse operations to finish solving the equation. So we can subtract this 43 now from both sides. When we do that, we will get 7r equals negative 42. And then we can go ahead and divide both sides by 7, because again, that's undoing the multiplication of 7 times r. I'm running out of room, so I'm going to write over here. We're going to have r equals negative 6. So don't forget about the negative, because we have a negative divided by a positive. Again, we don't want to lose any of those signs along the way. So now that we've gotten the variable by itself, we are finished. But again, if you want to, you can go ahead and check to make sure you did the whole problem right. Because again, there are a lot of steps in these problems. And it always helps, if you feel like you might have made a mistake, to just go back and plug it in and see if you got the correct answer. So since we found that r was equal to negative 6, we can go ahead and plug in negative 6 anywhere we see an r. We just want to be careful because we are plugging in a negative number. So in this second one, I did put parentheses around that since we're going to have minus a negative. And again, then we can go ahead and start simplifying. So if you want to simplify inside the parentheses first, in this problem, I would suggest doing that. So we can go ahead, negative 6 plus 9 would get us 3. And then we can do 1. If you have minus a negative, that's always going to turn into a plus. They kind of cancel each other out. So 1 plus 6 is going to get us 7 equals 1. Now we can start to multiply. So we have 5 times 3, that's going to get us 15. Negative 2 times 7, so a minus 14 there. And yes, 15 minus 14 gets us the one we need. So that shows us that we did find the correct answer for this example. So to kind of sum up using the distributive property to solve any equation that you have, you always want to take the number outside the parentheses and multiply it by the numbers inside of the parentheses. After that, you probably will have to start combining like terms, and then you can use your inverse operations to get the variable by itself. And that's how you use the distributive property to solve equations.